Hi, everybody. Welcome to Know the Code Show. Today's what? Episode 12. We're going to do something really, really fun today. We're going to take a look in Core, and we're going to start refactoring and learning about quality coding and what goes into quality coding. So we'll go a little bit slow here today. It's probably going to take us a little bit longer than the normal 20, 30 minutes that we've been doing. So if that happens, I just want to give you that heads up. Now, before we get rolling here, I just want to let you know that we are not, as we go through Core, we're not saying that, let me back up a second. The reason why Core has some quality issues to it from the standpoint of being a software engineer and what we're teaching you, all the principles that we're teaching you, is Core is open to anybody to come in and be able to contribute to WordPress itself. Therefore, there's going to be some things. It's 10 years old. There's going to be some things that we can sit and point out and go, you could do this better. You could do that better. That's not the impetus of what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to say Core has issues that, the folks who have contributed to Core, we're not trying to devalue anything that they're giving to Core. So I just want to make that very, very clear, that all we're doing is taking the code that's before us and using that as a teaching tool. So anything that you're doing in your code needs to be of a higher standard. It needs to be high quality. It needs to comply to quality coding and software principles. And those are the things that we're teaching. So we're not attacking Core. Just want to make that clear. And as Carrie would say, oh, there's that politician hat on again. I just want to make it very clear to everybody so no one's out there bashing Core, okay? Now let's get rolling. And that's why I came on the air here today to talk to you about that. I'm going to switch over to my screen, so just give me a minute here. Okay, let's do a screen share. There we go. You see my screen now, right? Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to deal with apply filters, and we're also going to deal with do action. And the easiest way for us to look at this code is to put it side by side. So if you're using PHP Storm, that's a pretty easy thing. You can actually go up in the toolbar and be able to split your screen. Now, I've got it mapped so that I can split my screen with just a nice little keystroke here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Well, if I click on the right darn thing, it's going to be one of those days, Okay, so by doing that, you can see now we can compare code side by side. Well, that's pretty cool, isn't it? And if I want to come down here and drill down so that I want to look at do action, I can just start typing do action and see how it comes up for me, that I can then go and select it. So now I can pull this up. Cool, huh? Now, what I want to do is we've looked at this a couple episodes ago, and we saw how wet that this code is. Now, wet is opposite of dry. Okay? Wet means we enjoy typing. That's what it means. And what that means is you have code duplication. You're duplicating code and or patterns in your code. And you can clean that up by refactoring. And that's what we're going to learn about today is refactoring. Now, let me give you a good example. As you start to scroll down this code, right here, what do you see? See it? That is wet. They're the exact same code. There's nothing different there. The only thing that's different is that the variable here is called all_args in the do action one. And over here, it's just called args. There's a reason for that, although it didn't have to be, because down here, oops, sorry about that. Let me get that out of your view. Down here in do action, this is the do action side. You can see right here, it says do action. If you come down here, here's args. So the code is declaring it to be an empty array before any of the major work starts down there. So here, this could have just been called args up here and passed in to keep these two exactly the same. Some other areas that are very wet, actually, just about everything in these two functions is wet. And we're going to take a few episodes and go through and clean it up. The next one that's wet is right here. You can see it. See that? Then this is wet. The next one. Aha. Okay. So you kind of get the idea of what I'm doing here. So let me pull open the challenges and the questions, and we'll get rolling with this here. The very first question that I asked you is looking at those two functions. So if I say this and this, that little chunk of code, first of all, you notice they're the same, but what's the purpose of that code? What's it doing? Were you able to figure out what it's doing? Yeah, it's not real clear, is it? When you look at it, it's not real clear, and that's a problem. Let me give you a hint. You see this inline comment right there? When you look at this code, you can't just look at it and say, it's doing this, right? It doesn't jump out at you. You have to take a little bit of time, look at the code, analyze it to figure out what the heck is it doing. So they put this inline description in there, which is that comment in there to tell you, okay, this little chunk of code is doing this. Whenever you put inline descriptions into your code, little bells should go off in your head. Ding, 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 ding. And it should say to you, hey, why do I need this? What about my code is not telling me what this piece of code is doing? Why do I have to add a description in there to be more clear about the intent of what that code is doing? Does that make sense? Okay. So whenever you see inline descriptions, ask yourself, stop and say, why did I put that in there? Did I put it in just, to ring a bell for myself, or maybe it's a to-do, so I remember to go back and do something later? Or did I put it in because my code is not clear? In this case, it's in there because it needs to tell us what the heck this little if block is doing. All right. That's a quality code alert for you there, folks. All right. So what the heck is this thing doing? Well, it's doing a couple of things. Let's go down and take a look. We learned in several episodes that WP_current_filter is an array, and it holds all the actions and filters, which are events. It holds an array of all the ones that are being processed. So they're actively being processed. It holds all of them. The very last one is the one that's being fired right now. It's the one that called apply_filters. See, you can see it right here. And you can see it down here. It's the event. This tag, by the way, is the event name. So it gets put onto the bottom of that particular array. So it's the last one. And it says, this is the one that's going on right now. It just got fired. Okay. So that's what's happening here is it's loading it in there so that you know that's a current event that's occurring. Then with func_get_args, it's grabbing all the arguments that got passed and it's sticking it into args for apply filters. It's sticking it into all_args for do action. And then it's calling this little function, which has a pretty good name to it, actually. It is WP_call_all_hook. When it's prefaced by that underscore in the beginning, that's an indicator to tell you the purpose of it. The intent is to be private. Yeah. Not to necessarily be called in the extension of your plugins or theme. It's private to WordPress. Now, because this is not OOP, any function can be called. So just because you preface it with an underscore and you're intending for it to be private doesn't mean it's going to be private. Anybody can still call it. Okay. All right. So that's what this is doing. Basically, I mean, we can go through and we can look at the code, but we're not going to do that today. Instead, what I'm going to tell you is, let's pull this open. Whenever all is passed in as the event name, or here the hook, which gets stored in $tag. So if you just were to send in the word all, it explains right here what it's doing, right? This is in Codex under add action. So it says, can also be the name of an action inside of a theme or plugin file, or the special tag all. Okay. It just still doesn't really tell you what it's doing, right? So let's get rid of that. I just wanted to show you where that word popped up. That's the only place you're going to find that, by the way, folks, because this is not being called in core at all. It's just there. It's a hook in there that allows you to access it. But basically, it's going to go and fire all of the registered callbacks. That's what it's going to do. All of them. Okay. So everything in the event registry is going to be called. That's what it's doing there. All right. So if we move on down, the question that I asked you was, what was the purpose? And we said that it's basically processing the all hook, the all event. That's what it's doing. So what's another way of rephrasing that? Do the all event. That's one name. You can give it another name if you'd like, but that's the name that I chose. All right, so let's move on to explanation of the first code challenge. Did you guys do the code challenge? Did it make you nervous to go into core and start hacking stuff up? I bet it did. Yeah. Okay, so I gave you some pseudocode, right? And I asked you to replace the pseudocode bit by bit by bit. Okay, let's see if I stuck that. Just one moment, please. I did stick it in up here. Okay, so here's the pseudo function. And what we want to do is, I just told you that we're going to refactor this baby up here, right? We're going to move this code out and we're going to put it into this function. So first step, let's walk through. We need to name the function. So you want a purposeful name, and functions and methods are verbs. They're actions. You do something, right? We're going to do some work. So you want it to start with a verb or have a verb in it. That way it's telling you when you look at the code, this is an action. I'm doing something. You don't have to call it do. You can call it whatever else. Is, has, do, apply, add. You get the point, right? So let's call this, please hold. I have some code here, so I don't have to sit and type. You don't want to watch me type all day, do you? I didn't figure that you did. All right, so, and I named it wrong. Okay, so do the all event. That's what we said the purpose was, right? Okay, next we need to change and give this a purposeful name. Well, what do we need? Let's take a look at our code here. I need the tag. See the tag right here? And if I scroll up, here is the tag. That's the event name being passed in to either do underscore action or apply filters. So I need that to be passed to me. Tag is not very descriptive, is it? It doesn't really tell you what the heck is a tag. So we're going to give it a different name. Let's call it event name, not for event name. There you go, event name. Does that make sense to you? It should. I mean, that's basically what the heck it is, right? And I'm going to move this over a little bit. The is filter event, there's a difference between the code. And let me copy over what's down here, and then I'll show you the difference and why it's there. Okay. So I'm just going to go and grab this. And I have my placeholder there, so I remember to come back up and put it back. And I'm going to get rid of this inline comment. That was just a placeholder. And I'm going to put that in. I'm also going to clean this up. Why? Because WordPress coding standard likes a lot of spaces. So don't look at core as your example of quality coding or compliance to the WordPress coding standard. Core team knows that. It's nothing that I'm saying that anybody would be upset about. It's just true. Okay. All right. So here's tag, and we need to change that now to our variable. There it is. So we're going to do the exact same thing we were doing before, right? All of this is exactly the same. So the very first thing I'm doing is I'm declaring args as an empty array. Then I'm going to come down. I'm going to do all the same stuff I did here. And then down here, what's different? Well, with events, with filters, I need args back, right? You can see it's grabbing all the args right there. And I want that back because I come back down. You can see here's args right there. Yeah. And below it, args could change. So I need that back. However, in actions, I don't need the value of this back. Instead, I pointed out down here, we are setting it to an empty array. Well, I can get rid of this code right here, that right there. See it? I can get rid of that, and I can say, if this is a filter event, meaning it's being called from apply_filters, I set that to true, and I'm going to return what's in args. It may be an empty array, or if all was called, it could be all of the variables that got passed, all the arguments that got passed will then be returned. Okay. If this is not a filter event, if it's an action instead, we just return an empty array. So that's why I have this little flag here. Does that make sense? Hey, anything that's not making sense to you, and you're live with me right now, right there in Crowdcast, under the video, you see the tab there for questions. Just put your question there and I'll answer it when we get to the end. All right. So let's look at, we know I'm either going to return an array or I'm going to return args. So let's wire this thing up. Cool. What we need the function. And let's come on over here to action first, and then I'll go and I'll do it in the filters. So right here, we just got rid of all this code, and we know that we want it, well, butterfingers today. We want it to be in args, and I'm going to put this here. I need to pass in the tag, right? The tag gets assigned in the argument list to event name over here in my function. So that name, whatever that string is, then gets passed. All right. I no longer need this down here. Wow. Look at that. Look how much we just cleaned that up. We no longer need this. Now, when you look at this code, and I'm going to slide this over so you can see. When you look at, you come in here right now. Here is do action. And you come down to this new line that we just put in, and you say, what does that line, what's it doing? And you compare that to the if block that was there before. Isn't this much more clear? It's telling you, go do the all event. That's what it's telling you to go do. And when you come back, give me back the args. That's what it's doing. It's much more readable. Now, I'm going to stop right there. Let me address something for you. Some will argue that refactoring code refactoring means we're abstracting. We're hiding away the implementation, right? And we're giving it a purposeful name that tells you what that abstraction is doing. So we just took that if block and we abstracted it, we refactored it, we moved it to another function. And then we're calling that function by a name that tells us the purpose, what the heck it's doing. And we put that in our code. Now our code is much more readable. Some are going to argue that it's better to have big, huge, long functions with all the code in it so that everything is there for you to be able to ascertain what's going on. I want you to shake your head side to side. Come on, do it. No, that's not true. Because when you look at the code, you tell me what's more readable. Is this more readable? And when we refactor this stuff out, or, well, see, I removed it down here. But if I still had that in here, down here, down here, boy, that didn't come out very well, did it? If that code was still there, which would be more readable? Here, let me just go copy it back down. And then you can tell me which one is more readable. I'm going to grab that again, and I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to put that back in. This was the original code. And I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to say, for this entire code block, do you really need to know in apply underscore filters what all of this is doing? Does it help you to understand the entire scope of apply filters? It is nice to know what this block is doing. And if you want to know specifically what the all event is, you go to that function. And only the stuff that's needed for this function, this purpose, is in there. That's it. Much more readable. Easier to look at your code. Yes, you'll jump around, but I'm going to tell you, it's much easier to look at 10 lines of code than it is to look at 100 lines of code, or whatever the case may be. All right, so let's go ahead and refactor this. Now, this needs to be set to true. Why? This is an event. Yeah, that's an event. So if I jump back up here again, I need to, or a filter. Tongue-tied today, man. All right, so we need to know that this is being called by a filter. It's a filter event, so therefore I set it to true. That's it. That's all I was doing there. Okay, does that make more sense to you? Do you like that that is now much more streamlined? Look at that. Look at all that code we just cleaned up in here. I think there were 7 lines, including the inline comment that's are now all gone. When you didn't really know what it was doing before anyway, right? Now at least you know it's doing do the all event. You could even say do the all event and return args. I mean, you can get as descriptive as you want. For me, I just did this. And now look how dry this code is. No longer repetitive, redundant. So let me right there, we're going to stop. We're going to do another quality code alert. Why is wet code a bad thing? Because let's imagine that, well, right now we have a perfect example. We can look at this even further. Here is some wet code, right? Right here and right here, the exact same code. It is bad because if this code needs to change, you have to change it. You have to remember to change it in 2 different spots. It has the exact same purpose. It's doing the exact same thing, but for maintainability, you've got to change it in 2 different places. Okay. The second is for testing. When you're testing code, okay, we ran into a problem with that piece of code. Now you've got to remember to go and test the other piece, that same functionality. Abstracting that functionality away, drying it up so that you're not repeating yourself, makes your code much more readable, maintainable, right? And more testable. It also will start leading you more into modular coding. And that's something you're going to learn much more about when you get into Dev Apprentice and or Dev School, about modularity. All right, let's move on. Some folks are going, what's modularity? I want to know. Well, you're going to have to wait for that. All right. So the next one, let's see, what was the next question I asked you? Well, question number 2, I already answered. I asked you about, and I already removed it, where it had the args equal to empty array in both of these functions. Was that necessary anymore? And you shake your head side to side, shoulder to shoulder, and you say, no, that's not necessary anymore. So we cleaned up that code as well. Excellent. Now let's go to code challenge number 2. And this one, I asked you to take this chunk of code and this chunk of code right here and refactor it yourself. I mean, I just taught you how to do it, right? So let's walk down the steps. Okay. Step number 1, we need to determine what the heck this code is doing. What's the purpose of the code? Okay. Let's look. How do we jump into this if block? It says it's going to evaluate if this is not set, which don't use is set here. I would use array underscore key underscore exists. There's the algorithm for that is specific for looking at keys in an array. Okay. So what this is doing, oh, I take that back. This is actually looking at the value. Never mind. Delete that from your brain. This is looking at the value. Okay, so we have a filter, right? This is the global for the event registry. WP underscore filter is the global variable for the event registry. It holds all of the callbacks, and you've seen that lots of times if you've gone through all the episodes. And you get to that callback by looking at the event name. So what it's doing is it's saying, what? I just told you that keyed by event name, you want to look at the callbacks. So this is saying if there are no callbacks registered, jump into here, do something with this other if block, and then return the value. Over here, same thing, except it's an action, so you do not return a value, right? It's the only difference between these two pieces of code. Okay, that's the purpose. That's what we're doing. So we need another function. Okay, let's scroll back up. And instead of me typing like a silly goon like today I'm not so good at, we are now going to go. Oh, actually, I take it back. Sorry about that. We're going to get to that here in a second. The best way to refactor this is to start with the innermost block. So we're going to refactor this part first, and then we'll come back and we'll look at that part. Sorry about that. Sorry for the confusion. All right, the innermost block is doing what? What's it doing? It is what? It's saying, is the all set? Okay, so is this an all event? And if it is, you need to pop off the all event off of WP underscore current filter, right? Because why? Well, let's come back up. What did I say up here? It's the last one in WP underscore current underscore filter. And that is what, guys? Yeah, right. It has the list of all of the events that are being processed. All the events that have fired that are being processed. That's what's in there. So we need to get it off of that array. Got to get it out of there. That's what array pop does. It's removing it. And it's popping off the last one. All right. So if we are doing the event or the all event, we need to get rid of that one. All right. We can do that. Cool. So let's go and we're going to cut that out of there. And we're going to come up here and we're going to say function remove the all event from current filter. And I'm going to put that there. I'm going to clean this up. You're now doing it by WordPress coding standards. There you go. We need a couple of global variables in here, though, don't we? Put those in because that's a global variable and that's a global variable. So we need both of those. Let's put some comments in. No, not inline comments. I hear someone saying that. I heard you. Up here, these are doc blocks. So you want to put those in to let us know what this function is doing. Tells you since for revision, tells you whatever parameters are coming in, which this one has none, and what's being returned. That's what this does. Okay. All right. So now I can go and grab this and we can come down here and we can say, do that. It's a little easier to read if I would scooch this over so you can read it, right? Now you know that whatever this is doing up here, if I jump into this code block, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the all event from the current filter. That's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to return. Isn't that a little bit more clear to you than that? Makes it more readable, doesn't it? So let's go ahead and add that over here. And we can get rid of this. Excellent. Now, let's take a look at this code. How far can we refactor this? Your instinct, because you're just learning about this, would be that this whole code block needs to go away. But there's a return statement right here, right? So therefore, if this whole thing goes away and then I return some value, I still would have to have an if to be able to determine if we are returning or not. I need a way to know that mechanism to know, oh, yep, this was true and I want to be able to return. So there's still an if block. The only thing I would be saving is this line of code because that would be abstracted away. So it doesn't really save me much of anything. Therefore, why add that complexity to it? Instead, I want this to be more readable. I want that to tell me what the heck that is doing, right? So let's remove this. And we're going to say not our callbacks registered for the event. Let's see, sorry. I have that somewhere else, so we can go and get rid of that. There we go. That's what that is doing. It's checking to see are callbacks registered for the event. Now I need to pass what event that is, right? We know which one to evaluate. And now, isn't that a little bit, let me move this over. Isn't that cleaner to look at? Now you know just by reading what the purpose is, no inline comments, it says, are callbacks registered for the event? No, they're not. Okay, that's that not. All right, well then come down here and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to remove the all event from the current filter. Okay, I did that. And then I'm going to return. I'm going to bail out of here. That to me, and you nod your head, yes or no, side to side or up and down, is this more readable than that? Can you quickly look at it and not have to figure out what the heck is going on? That is the purpose of quality coding. One of the major purposes is much more readable. Let your code tell you what it's doing. Yeah. You can go too far with it. Yes, you can go too far with everything in life. And we'll be talking about those strategies as we move along. But now we need to create this function. So let's come on back up here. Why not? We're putting it all up here. And we're going to say function. And we're going to say, what the heck did I call it? All our callbacks registered for the event, not capital. And I need an event name. Okay. I need global. I need the global for the registry. That's it right there. Right. And then I need to be able to return. I need to be able to return is set. And that would be for what? Filter. And that. Okay. You can do it this way. And this checks to make sure that there's nothing there. But honestly, you don't have to because there are checks in this to be able to wipe out anything that's empty. So you can do an array key exists, and you can look at, oops, the event name and then the registry. Because if the event name's in there, there's callbacks. If that's unclear to you, don't worry about it then. You can just do is set. So what's happening there? It's telling you, it's doing a validation check. And it's telling you, are there callbacks registered for that particular event? That's what it's doing. Now you'll say, well, that's only one line of code. That seems kind of silly. What if you need to do other checks? What if the event registry changes? And now you first need to check, does the key exist? And then, what if we did this? Yeah. So first I check that the key is even in there. And then I check to make sure that I can do is set, I can do empty, that, oops, that there actually is an array there. I could do is array, I could do all kinds of little thingies, right? To be able to validate that, yep, there are callbacks in there. So it gives me the flexibility for the future to be able to add in more validation to what's going on. Okay, so this, if I come back down to my code, look at that. Look how readable that is. Do you like that better, or would you prefer this? So I'm going to go and I'm going to get rid of this. When you're looking at little bitty chunks of code that you wrote yourself, you'll go, well, I know what's going on. I don't need to learn quality coding. Now imagine that, and all of us do this, right? We get other plugins, we get other people's code, and then we got to try to discern what the heck are they doing. And that's what this does for you. You don't have to spend the time trying to figure it out, right? Instead, you just look at the code and you go, okay, I do this first, and oh, no, there are no events or no callbacks registered. Well, I don't need to do anything then. Just get on out of there. There's nothing wired up to this baby. Get out of there. And then you come down to here, and there's other things. Now, the rest of this is wet, and we're going to deal with that in the upcoming episodes. But this just gives you a taste and gets you started. So I hope that makes sense to you. Let's take a look and see. What questions do we have? Okay. Hi, Laura. All right. In the refactor code for do the all event, I think that the call to func get args would get the args for the new function. You are correct, and that is true. So therefore, that doesn't work, does it? So therefore, we would have to pass it, right? And we could do that. Good call. So we'd have to do get args right there. Good catch. We come back up to here. Here we go. We can go args. Cool. And yep, I can get rid of that. And look at this. I can get rid of that. And now I can do that. Isn't that a lot cleaner? That's pretty cool. Thank you, Laura. Good question. And I'm going to mark that as done now. There is still a little bit of cleanup we can do in here, but I'm not going to worry about it because some of this can be combined to know, oh, I already know that I'm doing the all function, right? So I could check to make sure, are there any callbacks for the tag? Because if I come down, well, where the heck is that? Right here. See, I could remove this from here and let it just process back up there. I could do that. Yeah, there are other things that we could do, but we're going to keep it simple for now. Simple is good. Okay, doesn't look like there's any more questions here. If after the show you guys have questions, you know where to find me. You can come into Slack and ask me there. You can, if you're not a member, why not? But if you're not a member, you can actually leave me a question in the comments and I'll take care of you there. All right, great. Thanks for joining me. We didn't go too long today, only 11 minutes longer. See you later. Bye.